talk about this book.
Okay.
The Value of Nothing. Let's start with a little clip.
Cover looks great.
Growing up, my parents had a convenience store, and my favorite thing there was the price gun. Especially when I got to make my own prices. And of course, I knew the exact value of my little brother. As a kid, that was a joke. But given our current crisis, when we see this as more valuable than this, when most people can't afford this, but they call this a value meal, where a tomato farmer gets paid less in a year than a Wall Street banker gets in an hour. It seems as if the joke is on us. So how do we get here? From the 1970s onward, our economy was hijacked by free market...
Okay. You say... yeah, no, it's a really interesting clip. I'm sorry we can't just show it for 5 minutes. You can see the trailer on the internet. rajpatel.org, I think.
The book is really good as well.
Yeah.
I had the great
and then,
tweeted.
Yeah, you say the true value of a hamburger is $200.
Yeah.
Why is the real price of a hamburger $200?
Well, in fact, it's more. $200 was the value that was put...
That was a promotion.
That's right. It was, buy one, get one free. No, that was a calculation that was done by some Indian economists 20 years ago, looking at one particular farming method where you destroy rainforest and you lose the carbon, you lose the trees, you lose the wildlife, you lose the biodiversity, and that has a valuation. And if you do the numbers in a particular way, then $1 burger should cost nearer 200. But that's not the only thing. What some of this, these tomato workers, for example. In America right now, there are over 7,000 people who are in conditions of modern slavery, who are chained up to trucks, who are living in some really violent conditions. And because they are paid so little, burgers can be cheap. But if they were paid a living wage, it would cost even more than $200. So this $200 number is an indication of the fact that we don't pay environmental costs, we don't pay full wages, and there are a range of costs, particularly social costs, that never feature into the value.
Yeah, and what you do is you explore what is the value system underneath, making us pay only $4 for. What is that value system underneath?
Capitalism. When you set the profit motive.
Why doesn't it include all costs?
Well, the way that we set the market up is that when there can be costs pushed out to the margins, where you don't have to pay the costs of your environmental destruction, where you can depend on a system where women's labor, for example, in the home is unpaid, where you can get away with buying tomatoes from workers who live in modern slavery, then your products can be cheap. And if you don't have to pay the healthcare costs associated with what you eat, then, or what you produce rather, then again, McDonald's is able to make a profit in this calculation. But if you take the bigger calculation into effect, they're destroying value rather than creating it.
Okay, but is it a law of nature that we use this value system?
Not at all. I mean, capitalism is historically just a blink of an eye. There's nothing natural about capitalism, and there'll be nothing natural about what succeeds capitalism and what comes next. And it's important to mention that, because right now we believe that we are in the only possible world where there can be no system other than capitalism, and there will be. I mean, anyone with any historical imagination will be able to concede that there's.
Okay, but now we address the activist. How can we change this to have prices reflect more of the actual costs?
Well, I mean, in part, we do need to demand things from our governments.
We have to say, can we please pay $400 for a hamburger?
No, we have to say, can we please have our labor paid what it is worth? Can we organize ways in which some things just don't belong in the market? I mean, in the US, for example, we have the cheapest food on earth. We have dollar burgers, for example. And yet we have 50 million people who are food insecure. And so the problem there doesn't seem to be cheap food. The problem is that people are too poor even to afford a dollar burger. And it seems to me the thing to fight for there is higher wages and employment. And there are people fighting for that.
But you are asking actually for a much bigger change than just fair wages or better environmental sustainable projects. Because when I read your book, I actually see this compelling urge for change, real change, like a mindset change even, that we don't think of ourselves as rational actors or anything, but as human beings with altruism and all these things. And so how do you think, how is that feasible, such a change?
But I mean, the joy of it is we're more than just consumers. We are not these rational actors, this homo economicus that we are told that we must be in all the theories and in the models. We're much bigger than that. And you're already seeing, I mean, look at what's happening in the Middle East. Look at how groups are organizing to actually create different and better worlds. I mean, in the US, again, we have a lot of groups that are fighting to end hunger. Not just reduce poverty, but to make poverty go away altogether. And that bigger goal recognizes, of course, we're selfish and we're greedy. I mean, I don't look like a hippie. I'm not a hippie.
Is that a bad thing?
Well, I mean, I don't think that we're all creatures of light.
You're actually called the rock star amongst the social activists. Is that a benign reputation?
No, not really. Yeah, if I'm anything like Bono, no. But I mean, it's not just about it's not just about recognizing that we're creatures of light and joy. Of course, we have dark sides, but the institutions around us can help make that better. And there are a lot of grassroots organizing for climate change and for food justice that actually do help us bring out our more positive kinds of organizing.
It still remains a bit abstract to me.
So, for example, I mean, in Oakland, near where I live, there's a food policy council. And the idea there is that that we need to feed everyone in a particular community. And in part, this is inspired by something very concrete, by the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers, I mean, everyone knows the Black Panthers as this US social movement that had guns. But in fact, their most successful social program involved feeding kids. And they fed more kids at the height of their program than the entire state of California did. And this very concrete action
now, that's beautiful, but will that ever change the system?
But it did change the system. It was because they fed kids that the federal government instituted a full federal feeding program for children. I mean, the federal program also then killed a lot of the Black Panthers. Let's not be too starry-eyed. But what's important here is that change can happen. And when you politicize hunger, like in Algeria, like in Tunisia, what was the last thing that Ben Ali did before he fled to Malta? He dropped the price of bread by 30%.
Yes. Yeah, that's, there's a very old saying, and it says, every country is 3 meals away from a revolution. And that failed in the 20th century. So there were a few dictators who really managed to starve the population, like Stalin, Mao did, Kim Jong-il, he managed to do it for decades. They were starving and there was no revolution. So I was wondering, why has food come to the fore now as a political issue right now?
Well, I mean, it's certainly true that you have high prices. But also you have, I mean, in Algeria, where this started, you have chronic unemployment, particularly in urban areas. You have a lot of organizing that's already happened. And then there'll be something that will trigger it. I mean, in Mozambique last year, it was a 30% rise in the price of bread. This year, it was, again, an increase in the price of wheat.
But it is as simple as that, you say, a rise in price?
No, because India has had 18% inflation in December.
Yeah.
Where, people were on the streets. But it didn't cause a change in the government.
And how do you evaluate then the role of social media in politicizing food insecurity?
Well, I mean, what's social media? I mean, it's social media is stuff that we over here can read that's happening over there.
Exactly.
And it's an epistemological mechanism for us to see into the. But if we had transcripts of phone conversations, if we had transcripts of conversations that were happening between people, and that was posted on the web, that would be social media as well. I mean, I think social media is a mechanism for us to see into the world that we wouldn't ordinarily see. But I think social media can politicize. I think Facebook has a place. I think Twitter does. But for people in Algeria, was Twittering an issue? In Mozambique, sure, people were SMSing, but then they cut off the SMS, and people can organize without electricity. You don't need electricity to organize, and I think that, in fact, as you were saying, that makes it easier that you actually engage with people face to face.
But how much is unemployment then at stake? Because the 3 examples you gave were all in communist regimes, so people had to work regardless. Is that the thing, that unemployment, that you're sitting at home and feeling like, okay, let's be on the street, let's talk together, and then you get this social uproar?
It's never just one thing. It's not just an uptick in prices. It's not just unemployment. It's not just being unable to put food on the plate. A lot of it is to do with the political organizing that helps you understand that high food prices are a political issue that you can do something about.
Okay. In this talk show, we don't mind thinking and talking about aid. I was wondering, how would, according to you, the future of aid, is there a future for aid, and how would that aid look like? And then we've got like 2 minutes left.
Well, I think, I think aid is, in general, a bad idea. What we should be doing is paying reparations. To developing countries. One of the statistics, some of my colleagues at Berkeley, for example, did some maths about ecological damage. And it turns out that the ecological damage that the global north has caused the global south, $5 trillion minimum. But the third world debt entirety is 2.2 trillion. Sorry, so 5 trillion we have caused, 2 trillion they owe us. So we need to be paying for the damage we have already caused. Aid is a way of us making us feel better, but in fact, it's and particularly under this government, is a way of focusing control. But what we need to be doing is paying for the damage we have already caused through colonialism and through environmental damage.
Okay. Yes. Thank you very much. We've got to wrap this up. Thank you very much, and good luck with that beautiful book.
Thank you.